Hello and welcome to the Trust and Influence in B2B podcast. My name is Joel Harrison. I'm your host. In this podcast, as I'm sure you know by now, because you listened to lots of episodes before this one, we focus on all aspects relating to the role of trust in B2B. And today we're going to focus on the topic of influencer marketing. And influencer marketing is potentially a very powerful tool for facilitating trust in B2B, but it is a topic that has many misconceptions and a lot of cynicism surrounding it. We might say rightly, you might say not, but we're going to cover that in the next half an hour or so, depending on how excited my guests and I get over the course of this period. So to help tackle this, I've invited two of my favourite people in B2B marketing to be the interviews for this programme. And conveniently, or perhaps inconveniently, they're both called Katie. Strictly alphabetically, I'm going to introduce Katie Howell first of all. Katie Howell, as many of you in the UK will know, particularly in the UK will know, has been one of the leading voices in B2B social media for 20 years now, I believe. And she not only works with brands herself to build their social influencer strategies, she also operates as an influencer herself, the regular content activities and speaking and all those kind of stuff. So I'm sure you've seen Katie around if you've been to anything to do with social media in the last goodness how long. Katie Martell, meanwhile, on the other hand, on the other side of the pond, as you'll tell in a moment when she starts speaking, is probably the foremost influence in B2B right now. Working with some of the world's leading or biggest tech brands, she disappeared through sheer embarrassment and cringeworthiness, to devise and appear as to front their campaigns, hosting things like the Adobe Awards, etc. As a former B2B marketer herself, she also is a social native. You see what I did there? And brings a kind of a zing to influencer marketing that, frankly, we could probably do a lot more of. So, Katie and Katie, welcome. Lovely to see you. They don't know when to say. They don't want to talk over each other. So this is going to be a perennial problem for this podcast. They both waved and smiled. That's all we need to know.
We were told to behave prior to jumping on, so that's us doing our best. But no, thank you for having us. And Katie, I'm so happy to share the mic with you.
Likewise.
And they said they're going to behave, but whether they do or not, well, we'll see. So, we should start off with understanding what's the kind of the state of influencer marketing at the moment. I did some research recently into the B2B marketing awards and found that actually, if you take a broad definition of influencer marketing, there's an awful lot of it going on, which frankly I was really surprised of. But there's been a lot of false dawns around influencer marketing. Is this the real thing right now? Is it coming through? I'm going to go to Katie first of all.
Well, I can tell you as somebody who's been on, I think, every side of the, table when it comes to influencer work. I used to work in PR. I was brand side for most of my career. I'm working with founder-led startups, which is, mini influencers in themselves. These days, I'm on the influencer side, and I've already warned Joel that I hate the name influencer. But, the checks are clearing, so it must be real. That's what I keep telling myself, mostly on LinkedIn. And so all B2B, and my audience is marketers. So a lot of MarTech. So it's very meta marketing to marketers, but being so close with marketers shows me, yeah, it's real. I mean, we've talked about influencer marketing being the next big thing, as we always have a next big thing. But I think these days the proof is in what we see on LinkedIn, what we see with the tools available. As a B2B creator and someone with a lot of followers, I now have an in-house little studio. I can tell you exactly how many people have seen my post, where they come from. I can give a brand everything they want to see, was this worth our money? And there's also tools that help brands boost my posts. LinkedIn Thought Leader ads, for example. So a brand can actually boost my post, put it in front of their very targeted audience and see results. I think it's become one of those things that because we can now attach ROI to it, yes, it's very real. As much as I shy away from the name, it's really happening. And it's happening in other industries too.
What a wonderful situation. You're basically making a living out of something that you don't like the name for. That's great, isn't it?
Exactly. My therapist has heard a lot about it.
I imagine they have. Katie H. KTM is a living embodiment of this. Kate, what's your perspective on this? I mean, you've rooted in social media, but you're moving into the influencer space now. Is this real? Is this the start of something, or is it another false dawn?
It is the start of something. I mean, there's some rather interesting research from Ogilvy showing that 51% of B2B campaigns are now using influencers, and something like 90% or plus of CMOs plan to grow the spend with influencers. So it's definitely here. Is it mature? I'm not so convinced. So we're past experimental. And, I was doing B2B influence back 20 years ago when it was called blogger relations, all those many millennia ago. But it feels a little bit at the moment that we're still kind of playing it safe. And when we're kind of playing checkers instead of chess, if you see what I mean. We're not being very smart about this. We're kind of trying out a bit of LinkedIn and not really building proper, meaty influencer programs. And I think for those that are just fiddling around the edges, they are falling back.
So that's very interesting. I think you're right. But not mature is interesting because not mature could be called fun and creative and unshackled. Hasn't been kind of like there's two sides to that, isn't there? Right? We can be mature and boring, or we can be immature and creative. But somehow we've got to find somewhere in the middle. Katie, Martell, what do you think about that? Is this the Wild West is fun, but don't want to live there all the time, right?
I think it's funny that the idea of maturity to me in marketing says, can we measure it? Can we prove ROI behind it? Can we incorporate it into our campaigns that's more than just, hey, we have a product launch, share this video, or go get a bunch of people to share our video? It becomes part of the strategy. And in that regard, I agree, it's becoming more mature. I think, however, some brands, like to Katie's point, they're just scared. It's not part of the DNA to give up control to an external creator. It's very scary for some brands to give a set of messaging and talking points or whatever the brand kind of guidance is to a third party and say, okay, go do your authentic thing, which is predominantly the advice given. And so it becomes this weird tug of war where you have to kind of choose people who are trustworthy, which is hard in the world of online con artists, and capable of delivering. No offense to anyone who's listening to this who might be one of those con artists. Go on, do your thing. But I try not to be one of them, right? I try to bring kind of my own authentic self to every engagement. So you kind of know what you're going to get every time, even though it's very different per brand. I mean, I work with a ton. I work with Adobe, I work with Vimeo and MailChimp and TechTarget, all very different brands with very different personalities. But when they come to me, there's always this through line. And I think that's what helps. There's kind of this repertoire of work. You know what you're going to get. Because of that, we can do something that's brand safe. But underneath that, I come in it with strategy. I'm asking questions. I don't know if every creator is like this. This is what you get when you get a marketer and a creator. But I ask questions about how does this fit into your broader, messaging, or what else is happening at the company? What momentum is this part of? More importantly, how are we measuring this? I don't know if every creator does that, or that's where the maturity might be questionable. They're coming in just at being like, I'm going to do my thing, get impressions, go home. That's not necessarily valuable.
And I think that's a very good point, but there's that tension between, and we had a vague idea of some questions. It's completely gone out the window straight away, but in a really good way, right? I knew I'd get this value
5 minutes.
But there's a maturity in terms of H made a good point around the trust actually in these individuals. Do we trust them to do a good job? But the other thing is actually visibility of the individuals that could be influencers. And I don't know, I think you, Katie, this is why I think you are an exception in this regard, and I'm trying to be that in a little way, but I'm only ever riding on your coattails. But people who are actually able to do that bit, where they're actually able to function in that space and talk about different topics and creatively critique it. Whereas you might get that a bit more, Katie H, I think it seems like you might get that a bit more in consumer, or it doesn't really matter. You're just about awareness and attention. Is that so? There's a different. We haven't quite got that class of person in B2B, which is one reason why it's not mature. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think it's a different proposition in reality. A B2C influencer is mostly about reach. That's really where you're trying to get into new markets, etc. And I'm not suggesting reach isn't impactful, but alignment to your brand is more impactful. And in reality, you're trying to change the perception of your buyers in terms of trust. So that's behaviors and influence, real influence, as in purchase influence. And that bit is really quite a challenge for brands, because marketeers have to wear a bit of a PR hat and actually have proper conversations with influencers. And it's about bringing influencers into the fold, because they need to understand the background in the same way as I always say you need to do onboarding with your influencers, the same way as you would onboard another senior member of staff. You should give them everything, the background, and have that long-term relationship. So that is very different. Now, I'm not suggesting consumer isn't like that. The best of consumer is often like that. But remember, our goals in B2B are very different, and we are often looking for the expertise that sits alongside that. So you want the person who really gets cybersecurity, for instance, and knows the ins and outs of it, and is known for speaking on stage and has some innovation and thoughts. That person lining up with you, that your buyer values, that's where the real gem is.
Which is why, Katie, thank you, Katie H, and why KTM in the marketing world, you live and breathe this because you've done this for goodness about 20 minutes, looking at how young you look, but um, but maybe a little bit longer than that,
It's the
possibly.
middle part. The middle part is making me very Gen Z these days, but I'm almost 40, so I do confuse a lot of people with this middle Gen Z part.
Yeah, stop
You're
looking so
aging.
young. It's very
Thank you.
disconcerting. So, but you get it. You as an influencer in marketing, you get marketing. You've been there on this side. You can ask all those correct questions. But I think what we're straying into, KTH, is a little bit. There's a little bit around the thought. What's a thought leader and what's an influencer. So perhaps we'll get onto that bit later on. But I wanted just to go back to the point, Katie Martell. You made a point about the tools, right? LinkedIn have made a point. They've obviously LinkedIn have made a point of offering a kind of productizing this essentially, which is great. I'm often critical of LinkedIn, but it's a very powerful way of doing, isn't it? It leverages what was already going on the platform anyway, so it's very sensible. And is that the main tool that you use? Is that made a big kind of breakthrough in terms of what you're doing and what you're seeing? Katie Martell.
It's been the home for B2B. It is the only place where it is just a B2B conversation. There are obviously conversations, and I'm known for kind of blending a lot of outside topics more than MarTech. If you looked me up on, just as a side note, these influencer kind of databases, sometimes I get access to them and Google myself, like see what the algorithm says about me. And a lot of times it kind of lumps everything in as like B2B marketing expert and social justice, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is okay. It's true, actually. I do use my platform to shine a light on a lot of important topics. But if I'm like a marketer, it really diminishes people down to this, like, I don't know, attribute based list, and they pick it based on number of followers and reach. And that's just it's the antithesis of what Katie H is describing. It's this idea that you can just find people based on reach and click a button and send them materials and get that. We are not billboards. We are not just out of home ad space to buy, although you can put money behind my post and get it seen. It is about that initial brand. I just want to go back to Katie's point. It's about picking people that you feel is a representation of your brand, an extension of your brand. This is not about getting cheap hits. Some people treat it as such, pay to play, click a post, get reach. This maturity is about baking people into the process. So that's my first comment. But the tech, yes, the tech is supplying us with the tools to really be influencers in a very business-minded sense. LinkedIn has, like I said, thought leader ads. So an advertiser can sponsor a post and target it to a very specific set of members on LinkedIn, of which, by the way, there are like 1 billion people active. It's where B2B is. But LinkedIn's taking it further. I was just at their New Fronts event in New York, which is kind of like TV upfronts, but like for advertisers. So it's like where advertisers come out every year and say, hey, brands, look what we have. And this was LinkedIn's first time at this major old school industry event in New York. And everyone had a lot of buzz. What's LinkedIn going to announce? What are they going to announce? And LinkedIn's basically given the sweet, I promise, I am paid by LinkedIn, but not for this podcast. They do pay me, but not for this. I'm genuinely stoked about this. What they do is allow you to have connected TV ads. You can literally reach the CFO on their couch through connected TV on LinkedIn. They have pre-roll ads to some really popular creator-led shows. So you can run an ad against a show that's getting a lot of traction in different areas. They're leaning heavily into, yes, this is a creator-led economy, which we've been saying now, how long, Katie? For like 15 years, people are saying it's the creator economy. Now you need the economic part of that. And that's where LinkedIn is putting. So as a brand, you can say, I'm going to partner with this influencer and get organic reach, sure. But if I'm really smart, I'm combining that with my paid ad, which in B2B has never really been as exciting as it is right now. If you have money to spend in paid ads on LinkedIn, you will be shocked at how finite your targeting can be. You can upload your own data. There's a lot of really cool tools behind the scenes that I don't think many brands are playing with because it hasn't been possible before to reach a B2B audience in this way.
So
And it's fascinating. And it's a great way to waste a lot of money. Just kidding.
No, wait. Should constructively deploy. I did some research again on how much is spent on LinkedIn B2B marketing tools. I mean, something like on average, 70% of ad budgets are going on just on LinkedIn. It's just extraordinary. Just KTH, reflecting back on what KTM said, have you got any comments or thoughts on that? Or are there any other platforms that you're seeing? I know that you're quite an advocate of using a blend of platforms, aren't you? You talk a lot about Facebook in B2B, which always surprises me.
Yeah.
I mean, we always start using data from tools like Global Web Index to look at where our audiences are. And the work we did with a big tech brand showed that their C-suite buyers, so their buyer networks, were not really on LinkedIn. And this is the big challenge we have with LinkedIn is the more senior people don't tend to visit on a daily basis. Us as marketeers, we love it. We're there every day, as our entry level people. But actually, when you're after senior buyers, they may go once or twice a month. So you have a frequency problem with trying to get memorability and making sure that you've got part of that mental availability. So what we did was map the right audience onto Facebook. And because that's where all the C-suite hang out, unsurprisingly. But it means you have to create slightly different content. So the content we create is much more like you would see on CNN or CNBC, that kind of very fast-paced, newsworthy style of content. And we ran a 12-week campaign with influencers in a kind of a red sofa, for those in the UK, like the red sofa on the BBC type event. Number of different interviews covering a range of tech topics, and the result was an attributed pipeline of 38 million from Facebook alone. So I always caution about jumping straight in with the whole LinkedIn thing without knowing where your audiences are, and because Facebook is much more cost effective than LinkedIn. I'm not suggesting that you don't do LinkedIn. We do both, but it's where you're putting the content, making sure the content is relevant for that channel. There's quite a lot to think about in that perspective, and what works on Facebook may not work on LinkedIn and vice versa. So there's lots of elements to consider, but it's shocking actually how much, and we love it because nobody else plays in Facebook in B2B or Instagram or TikTok, very few. And yet, so when you do, it's an open playing field.
So I guess that the bigger moral picture is that there is the platforms are offering different things, right? And then there's, as Katie was talking about, there's also means of identifying influence as well. There's the channels to distribute. There's all kinds of, there's a bit of an influencer stack or sphere kind of developing in terms of what we can use, and that's great. I think that's something I certainly want to try and help kind of map myself just to understand it for my own purposes. So let's switch gear a little bit. We talked a bit, and we kind of start to segue on to kind of what's a thought leader and what's an influencer. And I'm trying to say, let's go back to that one. But for me, that's a very, very grey area, right? Because Katie, you were talking about Katie H. I think you were talking more around individuals with deep subject matter knowledge and potentially people working within companies themselves. I know there's in professional services, for example, you often have fee earners who will play that role. So they are influential, but they are thought leaders as well. So I'm going to start with you, KTH. Where do you think, is there a clear delineation between one and the other?
I don't think so. I mean, I could try, but I don't think so. In general, to be influential in B2B means you need to know what the hell you're talking about. It's not, you can't just get away with having great nails and doing a lovely little presentation of a package. It isn't the thing. And so the reality is, because what you're trying to do is as a marketeer of a brand, is build then you need to be with trusted voices. So there's very much a blend. And what you find there are influencers who are very specialist, like I mentioned, cybersecurity, for instance, but who'll specialize and drill down. And then there are those that are much broader across the spectrum and come from a different background and may well talk about broader perspectives like technology in professional services, for instance, or in marketing and all those things. So it's just different degrees. The point being is that you really do need, in my view, in B2B, people who have opinions that are respected. Because if you don't, you're not really changing the goalposts, are you? You're just making more noise. And honestly, it's probably just as cost effective to throw a load of awareness ads out. Yeah. You really, really want to use influencers to accelerate your pipeline, to your brand into consideration in those buyer networks faster, so that you haven't just got the CTO, I'm just thinking technical at the moment, but the CTO going, I need to buy this, but you've got the CEO, CFO, etc. Then you've got the whole buying network, understanding that this person has influence. I've seen them on telly, or I've seen them on a trade show. All of these things really matter in B2B, and that they're really our vanguard. They're the bits that you use to make the most out of your influencer relations.
Okay, that's very helpful, Katie. I mean, it's frustrating. As a journalist, I like a clear answer, not an it depends or it's the same. Katie Martell, are you a thought leader then? And are these things the same things, in your opinion? Because it's just an opinion, right?
Right. It's funny. I'm sitting with this question. It's actually a difficult one. I remember if you asked me this when I worked in a PR firm or when I was consulting in PR, and I used to ghostwrite for a lot of MarTech executives, some of the well-known MarTech executives that you've probably read. I used to ghostwrite for our executives when I was in house. I mean, I was a ghostwriter, so my face was never on the final product, but those were my ideas, and yet they were always they weren't my, you kind of take this creditless role when you play ghostwriter. I don't even feel comfortable saying those are my ideas. They were kind of a genesis, but what the work was putting it into a format that people could go, oh, this is challenging to the way I've seen things, and oh, this is teaching me something new. The work is actually in the packaging, and so original thought is required to be a thought leader. I've always said that, and a lot of people wanted to chase the thought leader title for the ego boost that it gave them. And follower count, honestly, lets a lot of people feel like they're really achieved. It's meaningless. Follower count is just an algorithmic play. I mean, right place, right time, consistency equals follower count. Are you a thought leader if you just create videos that are funny? You do have to know the industry. I'm thinking of Corporate Natalie, Rob Mayhew on LinkedIn. Funny people who create content that gets seen because it's humorous and it breaks through and it's short form, very TikTok-esque. By the way, LinkedIn now has this feed that rivals Facebook, that rivals TikTok. It's all vertical video. And it's there because they know they can monetize that. They can serve ads against it. They can serve out branded content, but it's also there for a reason. I think this is playing into thought leaders can actually, the work is actually getting those brilliant, challenging thoughts into a package that breaks through. So does that make a creator a thought leader, or does it make the creator the vehicle for the, I don't know. But I do think at the end of the day, what you want in B2B is someone with original thought. You cannot risk the brand going with just anybody on LinkedIn. But I will point and say only a thought leader is only a thought leader if the ideas they're sharing are real, are based in what Katie is describing, based in real expertise. I would not call most creators thought leaders, but I would not call most people who post on LinkedIn thought leaders. They are really, really only the people that are in the work. Maybe they're doing the research, getting it done. Every CEO wants to be a thought leader. Not every CEO can. I learned that firsthand. Sorry to all my former CEOs I used to work with, right? It's like there's a desire to make our executives into influencers, and it's just not possible. You really have to have this combination of originality as much as you do with this publishing mindset. I think I said a whole lot of nothing. Does that make sense?
That makes loads of sense. The thing that troubles me, as I want to put things in boxes. I'm a bit OCD. I'm having treatment for it. It's fine. But and the LinkedIn thing calling thought leader ads, they're essentially influencer ads, really.
Exactly.
So that
Exactly.
hasn't helped. Maybe I can maybe able to forgive them over time. But there is another layer though. We've talked about the kind of thought leader layer. I think Katie Martell expresses it brilliant. There has to be some level of original thought. There's influencers who may not necessarily know chapter and verse about a subject, but they are able to critique campaigns. And as one of you said, I forget which one, it's actually asking the hard questions and actually sticking to contribute to the success of the campaign by knowing the audience and knowing how to frame the content in the right way. That's playing a significant role, but it's not deep subject matter experts. The other level down from that, or two other levels down from that, one is advocacy, is customers, right? Or partners. And there's a whole lot of that in B2B, right? Now, advocacy is very influential, KTH. Would I imagine you'd agree with that, right? So tapping into that is very, very powerful. And yet it doesn't seem to be done as consistently or with as much purpose behind it as it might be. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely, it's true. Drives me mad. No, I think there are several challenges. Yes, it has influence. No, they're not influencers, if you see what I mean. Of course it does, because it's our review. It's somebody saying, yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, one of the big challenges that I think brands have is trying to get customers on camera is really tough, because they don't know how to encourage them. Lots of people are very frightened of the camera, and actually what you need is a good host to sit alongside them to help them kind of feel that they're just chatting away, and then they get in their comfort zone, and that meantime the camera's rolling, and you can take it. The other challenge that I often see is there's often these sort of case studies, testimonial styles, activity tend to be a one and done. Woohoo, we've done one video. It's like, what?
Yeah. No, you haven't.
Why are we doing this in more detail? Why are you just doing this factory tour and, and showing the boss talking about how your product is fabulous, instead of just breaking this up and telling multiple stories that fit alongside your messaging? And it's hugely frustrating is that we rush from content to content, from influence to influencer, without actually going, oh, hold on, what are we trying to get at the end of this? Instead of just producing volumes of stuff. And actually, there is lots to be said for really doubling down on your content, whether it's, you mentioned customers, but also employees, for employee advocacy. All of these things matter. You need a strategy for that.
Yeah, I was going to come on to the employees as the next bit, but I think your point is absolutely right. There's some of the best entries we had in the B2B Marketing Awards is where people took advocacy and they actually then baked it into a customer program. They had dialogue, they had networking, they had meetings, they created customer boards and things like that. So it's not just a kind of transactional conversation. Thank you very much on a shelf, or shelf being website. Is much more to it than that. Katie, Martell, what do you think? I appreciate this is not so much your area of expertise, but have you got any views on this one?
Oh my God, I hope that's facetious, because I have so much beautiful experience with this. Katie, when you said customers are scared of being on camera, you are so right. And accidentally over the past few years, I have carved out a little niche for myself being a host, being that good host that you mentioned. It happened accidentally. It was one of those situations where, oh, we just need someone, can you fill in? And I was really good at it. And what it's morphed into, I'll kind of jump to the end, is, for example, Adobe does this really well. Adobe Experience Cloud, they're B2B, not their like Photoshop, Illustrator products, but they're B2B digital marketing products. They have this incredibly focused customer program where, Joel's mentioned in my intro, we do a customer awards show every year. This is my 7th year being their host, and it's a global awards show. It rivals the Oscars. It's a red carpet experience. We have people from all over the world, the chief digital officer of this, the head of Martech for that, the chief data guy for this, and they come together in Vegas at Adobe Summit, and they get awards in categories like, the Transformer Award, which is recognizing their ability to transform internal processes, stuff that doesn't get celebrated ever. And now it's being given an Oscars-like experience. They don't just get a fancy award, though. They also do a deep dive interview series with me as the host, because I love doing this, where we sit down and we have a podcast format, we have a stage, and it's branded, all Adobe, and we create short-form content. In fact, this is a great chance for me to plug a new series coming out called Meet the Experience Makers. And you'll see all this kind of short-form content hit LinkedIn that links you back to broader 10 minutes, so not too much of an investment, conversations. And you get to see yourself as a buyer, a prospective buyer, or Adobe, or current. You get to see yourself reflected in these people. And to Katie's point, that is influence. That is now recognition. This person looks and sounds like me. They have my job, and here they are being treated like you would an industry influencer. They've got that reflected on their Champion program, which is really power users helping other power users. So it really helps that customer community be exactly that, a community. And they have online, message board, experience league. I could go all day. But customers become the biggest advocates for Adobe, not by accident, but because of this very strategic, and as a big team at Adobe, shout out to them, working behind the scenes to make this possible. They understand the value. They've invested in this for years. We did it over the pandemic. I broadcast from my living room in the global pandemic. We had celebrities singing from studios in LA. We had customers from all over the world. We made it happen because the customer becomes the most powerful advocate. And they're not just sharing Adobe is great and I love the software. They're sharing the kind of cultural shift that had to happen behind the scenes, the way that they had to build their teams, the stuff that really matters, not just fluff, but really, really tactical advice. And it's just meant, once you become an Adobe customer, you're now baked into this community, and it creates staying power as much as it affects all top of funnel stuff that we're doing. It's a great example. They do pay me, but I have to say, it's a beautiful example for others to follow.
But it's a brilliant example because it's actually the high point of that. I mean, I was putting this together for a presentation recently. There's lots of little anecdotal things you can do, and it seems like they're not joined up. They're not consistent or joined up, and there's not really a kind of like, what's the gold standard example of this? And you'd expect someone like Adobe to do that. So that's brilliant. Yes. So thank you, Katie. Really great. I'm glad you're being a walking embodiment of all that's good about influencer marketing and B2B. I'd love to get into employees, right? But I don't think we've got time, right? Because I've got a few kind of, so we'll kind of maybe come back to that one another time. So I think, what are we, so I think we're all kind of agreeing there's something here in influencer marketing. Katie, particularly, because this is what she's doing every day. But it's changed quite a lot in a short period of time. We've kind of seemed like we hit perhaps that critical mass. there anything we're expecting to see in terms of it changing or growing or developing or shifting in the next kind of 12 to 18 months? KTH, what do you think? Are there any expectations you're hoping or expecting to see in that time frame?
I think I have to go back to the buyer network because we keep seeing that growing. I think there's something Forrester said recently about there being like 13 internal and 9 external influencers to every purchase. And I think B2B brands will stop chasing individuals. At the moment, there's a very singular way of marketing. Here is our buyer, this is our ICP, blah, 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 say the same thing and actually understand that they've got a different network of customers, and that means you'll have a different suite of influence, and in some cases it'll be all about the customer's voice. In others it'll be the stand up on stage authority, and in others it'll be the famous humor driver. Whatever it is, the point being is the shape of influencer campaigns will A, not be campaigns, and B, it will just not be all the same. It's not a one and done type thing. And so I think we have to think about peers, analysts, and even, dare I say it, AI agents. Sorry, but we have to think about that. And influencers have actually a great impact on GPT, on AI, on the search engine AIs that are now rolling out. So you're no longer selling to a buyer, you're selling to a machine.
Yeah, well, that bit starts to make my brain melt. But I think your broader point about there being a buyer group is really relevant. With so much about account-based marketing, and LinkedIn kind of call it buyer group marketing, which sounds like the same thing as account-based marketing to me, but don't tell anybody. It seems like it's kind of it's going in that direction. So why shouldn't influencer marketing relate to that? Thank you, KTH. KTM, what do you think? What are we going to see in the next 12 to 18 months is going to move forward?
KDH is right. AI, ChatGPT is part of the buying process now. It is terrifying, but it's doing the work. I mean, it is doing the work. It is doing the consolidation of research. It's doing the shortlist. It's doing so much of what we in marketing have tried to control over the past X number of years with the rise of content, the rise of social. It's all happening in ChatGPT now, which means if you're not everywhere, it's not being found, and I think search traffic is going to be affected. It's starting to be affected. It's going from brand websites to ChatGPT. It's like 1% to 3% now, but it's going to be up to like 10 to 15% in the next 2 years. Everything's moving to GPT. So you have to ask, where are they getting their sources? And Katie's right. They're pulling from a wide range of places. So that always on, be everywhere your buyers are kind of advice that us PR people have been giving for many years is more relevant today because of AI. But when it comes to influencers, I'm hoping you're gonna be disappointed in this. I want to see more video, and I want to see it on LinkedIn. Katie, you were saying, the buyers aren't on, C-level buyers aren't on LinkedIn. Many are not spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, but many are. And the people that influence those C-level buyers, 70% of buyers today in B2B are millennial or Gen Z. 70%. Millennial or Gen Z, and US adults watch up to 2 hours of short form content a day. Why not try some short form on LinkedIn? It's there, it's being incentivized. Yes, they want me to say that, but I also honestly do believe it, that it's really, really the place where I'm seeing tons of engagement. I'm also seeing a lot of crap content. So I would love to invite the marketers listening to come, be human, be exciting, listen to what Katie is saying. Try not to do what Joel is doing. He's actually giving you a great case of what not. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Joel is doing great. I need marketers to look at this like a canvas and be experimental and reinvent this format. Don't try to be a YouTube influencer, but look at the opportunity. The traffic is huge. The engagement is there. More video on LinkedIn, please.
Okay.
More good video.
There we go. More video, more good video. Yeah. And so thank you, Katie. And thank you for the compliments as always.
Here to help.
So 2 quick questions, because as I knew would happen, we've kind of got so much to ask in so little time. So 2 quick questions to finish. So first of all, and I'll go to KTM first of all on this one, what would you say to a skeptical CMO who says, no, influencer marketing, no, it's nonsense. It's for consumers. It's for teenagers. It's, it's not for B2B. What would you say to them?
I'd say ask your buyers who they're following, ask your buyers who they are listening to, what voices they're seeking out. If you don't believe the well-paid PR people telling you to be on influencer marketing, go talk to your buyers. They'll tell you. They're there. They're laughing at videos on LinkedIn. They're finding their sources and their information in new places. Talk to your buyers. Okay, great, KTM. KTH.
I'll just say, lovely stat from Edelman says 89% of buyers trust their peers more than the brand messaging. Honestly, you need to get into influencer marketing.
Mic drop. Mic drop.
So last question, mic drop or not, is what would you say to a marketing manager, someone who's responsible for devising campaigns, running campaigns, who is different? It's a different conversation. They're a bit skeptical. They don't know where to start. Where would you start? KTH, first of all.
Start with one. Start by talking to one influencer and don't run it as a campaign. Look at building a long-term relationship with them. Like I said, start with onboarding them, co-create and co-collaborate to make the content that you need to make. More video, for instance, or have them as your host as well as in front of the camera. All of these things. I would say it's not about quantity. It never was. It's always about quality.
Okay, that's fantastic. And KTM, obviously, there are more tactical ways they can do influencer marketing other than diving in and hiring you to do a full awards program. So what might one of those look like?
I think I talk to a lot of marketers who are curious about how do we actually start working with people like you. And what I find is that the instinct over the last few years has been to try to make executives into influencers. So let me I would love to just dispel that myth and say it's actually a lot harder to convince somebody who isn't really going to invest the time and their personality and their energy into being a successful personal brand online. I'd rather see you take that time and really go find what Katie's describing, the influencers that already exist. And it doesn't have to be people with 100,000 followers. It can be people that are more niche, 10,000 or less, who have something to say, who already like your brand. Start there and try to find that Venn diagram between people who kind of already share your worldview and have a bit of following, and just start there. Don't try to make your executives into influencers. It's not working. They don't like it. It will fizzle out. All that work will be in vain. I've seen it happen too much.
That seems like very wise words. I mean, the amount of conversations I have with people about trying to turn senior figures into thought leaders, where they're just genuinely based on known, tangible knowledge, and to get all the hurdles associated with that and promotion, then to do it without that backing, it seems crazy. So this has been a fantastic conversation, as I knew it would be, and so I'm indebted to you both for your time and your insights and your general level of piss take, which has been pretty high. So that's really good. So I want to thank you both for joining us. Thanks. It's hard. You know, who says what? Hi first. Thanks to KTM first of all.
Thank you. Honestly, guys, thank you so much. And Joel, you're doing great. So Joel is slowly becoming the influencer he has always been. He has been the original B2B marketing influencer. He needs to know that. So if you're not following Joel personally, please do, because your stuff is great.
Katie's checks in the post. And KTH, thank you to you as well. I appreciate all your help in all of this.
Thank you. And you and I have had so many wonderful conversations about this whole topic. I'm sure there's loads more to come.
We will be returning to this, whether you like it or not. So thank you both. Now, if you've enjoyed this, there's lots more content like this on this podcast. So please do please do subscribe. We'd love to join us for lots of great content. It's the Trust and Influencer podcast with me, your host, Joel Harrison. But for now, thank you very much for listening and see you again soon.